Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, a weekly show helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. Today, episode 334, The Law of Service. And now, Experience of the Soul.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. I'm really excited today to be in the studio with my extremely kind producer.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. I like that. I love this, trying to come up with a new adjective every week. It's working out great. I want to do an edit where it's just go through and say just the adjectives
all the way
at the top.
That would be a great personal practice every day. Just play it on your walk, all the fabulous things.
Yes, I am handsome. I am kind.
Oh, that's right. I was handsome one week.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
And then today, we wore the same blue again. That's creepy, but yes, we're starting to mind meld.
Exactly. Well, welcome everybody to episode 334 of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson. This is week 2 of our 7-week series on the book 7 Spiritual Laws of Release. And the second law is going to be the law of service. So today we'll be discussing this second law, the law of service. It's a spiritual principle to bring us more peace and more abundance in our lives, which again, we all need it, right? Before we get to it though, as always, a couple shout outs we want to do. First shout out, we're going to be shouting out to a Facebook top fan who comments quite a bit and engages quite a bit, Ricardo Delgado. So, hey, Ricardo, thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging with us on Facebook. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we're so happy that you are being spiritually fed by what we're putting out there.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome to have you along the journey. And anything you want to share with us privately about the way it's touched your life. And if there's anything you want us to say on air about the way it's touched your life, please let us know. We love to share testimonials because and I love to hear it, frankly, because it helps me know I'm heading the right direction. And, Sean, I don't know if you remember, I just sent a thing for 5,000 downloads again. Yes. And that was really exciting because I hadn't gotten an update for a while. Anyway, thank you, friend, for listening. And we also want to do a shout out for a place, don't we, Sean?
We do. Today we're shouting out to Ridgeland, Mississippi. We have some listeners there that join us and download the episode each week. So, hey, Ridgeland. Let us know who you are in the show notes. Hit that, send us a text message, and just, if you like, send us a quick text message. Well, that was
hard. That was hard, John. Well, we know Ridgeland is a suburb of Jackson, right? It's beautiful. I know I always say this, but I love our country and I love to travel. And we were looking at all the beautiful parks and trails. And, it's, I know it's not a huge town, but it looks really beautiful, and happy to picture you there. Yeah.
The largest metropolitan area in Mississippi.
Yeah. So it's nice to have him. Yeah, it looks really gorgeous. Mississippi is really beautiful, and that part of the country is, I traveled there many years ago, and very, very memorable. So anyway, friends, thank you for being along the journey with us today. And as Sean said, we're in week 2 of our 7-week series on my book.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, welcome officially, everyone. Episode 334 of the Experience of the Soul podcast, 7 Spiritual Laws of Release, Law 2, the Law of Service.
Yeah. Well, law of service is a favorite of mine. I say that probably about all these, which is why I wrote a book about it. And these are the 7 laws that I come back to. And in case you missed last week's show, I want to mention that all of these laws presuppose that God's will for me is good. God's will for me is good. In other words, God loves me, and that these spiritual principles are simply a way I can embody and practice a spiritual principle. They are a way I can know my connection to God more fully. And the law of service is definitely about that. And not only do we see this law in Christianity, we see it in virtually every religion, every faith, every denomination that I know of. including the indigenous people and teachings. I point that out because the highest spiritual teachings are known in virtually every denomination that I know of. I mean, giving, forgiveness, service. And we know that because these are the things that make a society work, right? If all we do is take and we never give to others, this isn't a society that lasts very long. And as we were talking about last week, we see a lot of taking and a lot of put downs. And if you're serving others, boy, that's the last thing you're thinking of. You're thinking, how can I be connected? How can I be of service? How can I show my love? And so the timing of this, I think, is excellent because it brings us back into alignment with our call as spiritual people. It brings us back into alignment with the abundance and prosperity that we want to know, because we know God's goodness and God's love through service. So if you were taking notes in church, I'd say the title for today is The Law of Service. Number one, knowing your oneness. Knowing your oneness. So in our culture today, we see a lot. I think I'll just say how I think it feels. And a lot of my clients will say this. They'll say to me, I feel so isolated. And as much as I do in spiritual community, as much as I am with people, every now and then I'll get this feeling too of feeling kind of isolated. I think it's because we're so much on machines and computers all the time that we don't connect with each other in the way that we used to. And I feel like a lot of us are trying to work back to a happy medium with that because we're all on computers. I'm recording on a computer to bring you the show. You're listening on a phone or computer to the show, which is great. We love that. But we don't want to only be on these things, right? So instead of being siloed, what I'm saying is instead of being isolated and so siloed, if we realize we're all connected, it's like there's this invisible kind of spirit that unites us all. I'll call it God or the Holy Spirit or spirits. Some would even call it the Christ or even Jesus himself, is uniting us. But in the Bible, there's a lot about our oneness with God and each other and with Jesus. I mean, there's a scripture I'm thinking of now that says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me and I in you. So we know that, in fact, we are not alone. And I think that when we realize our connection with others, it was just what Sean and I were saying last show about, talking about other groups of people. You can only talk about yourself because when you're one with everybody else and everything else, that when you put somebody down, you're putting yourself down. In the old days, we'd say you were showing your backside if you put somebody down like that. But nowadays, that's common. But what I want to do is lift up and say we want to know our oneness and our wholeness. And we know we wouldn't talk down or, bad about somebody when we know we're one with them. That would be like talking bad about ourselves. If we know God is in all, then knowing our oneness, becomes, commonplace. We say, oh, of course I want you to have the same right I have because you're a part of me. We're both an extension of God's presence here on earth. That our Creator put us here to know our oneness. And I think that's what we're learning over and over and over on our journey is that, if we're at odds with someone, well, we find out later that that person was the very person that helped us grow on our soul journey. And that they were put here on purpose, not as an enemy, but as something to help us grow. So as we're talking about the law of service, knowing that God's will for me is good, it's also almost remembering in a global sense, God's will for everyone is good, not just me. God's will for everyone is good. And as we know our oneness, we want to help, support, and serve, knowing that as we do that, we serve ourselves. There is no other. Right. And so as we know our oneness, as we know our wholeness in this way, it really changes how we view society as a whole. It's a fundamental shift, really. There's also this idea that we are a personal soul. Yes, we're individual soul on a journey, but we're also part of the collective soul that's born to be here right now. And our question is, how are we going to survive as a species? How are we going to grow spiritually if we're spending time separating ourselves rather than joining and being with like-minded people, and also lifting up people maybe unlike us, or maybe that have less than us? They may even have more than us, but still being of service. I remember in my early days in ministry, I had a contract where there was an agreement about my position, and a part of my contract was not being met. And I got really frustrated. I was getting really angry, and I was concerned that my anger, my frustration were going to come out of my service to the members. And in prayer one day, I was asking God, how do I deal with it? I said, do I go to the executive director? Do I go to the senior minister? Because I was an associate at that time. And my guidance was, be quiet and be of service. And that was not what I wanted to hear at all. Be quiet and be of service. And so I would do, what I started doing is every time I went in the bathroom during the day, I would straighten up the bathroom. I would make sure there were toilet paper rolls in every stall. I would clean the counters. I would go down to youth ministry and straighten an area without anyone knowing. And I thought, there's some way in which I need to be of service. Maybe there's something I'm not getting. Maybe my ego needs this. I don't know. But I know right now I'm supposed to just serve others quietly. I'm supposed to do it without a thank you. And this was a really huge part of my spiritual practice. And I did it for about, 2 or 3 months. And then out of the blue, I was asked to start speaking on a regular basis, seemingly out of the blue. And by that service, some energy was released and something shifted. Was it my energy? Yes, I'm sure it was. Was it, but did I have to say anything to, the senior minister, executive director? I did not. I was simply abiding by this spiritual law that if I help someone, I help everyone. In the tiniest way, I said, I want to be of service. I was saying, I want to serve their souls by speaking. But I think it was my ego need. And I think by serving, it humbled me to be able to be willing to do anything to serve these souls. And my journey has changed quite drastically since then. But me being of service, humbling myself, was very, very important. There's this old song we used to sing. Sean, I don't know if you know it or grew up in church. My son learned it in YOU. It's called, it goes, humble thyself in the sight of the Lord. Like the women sing it, and then the men go, humble thyself in the sight of, and then the women again, humble. Oh, yeah. And then the rest of the music is, we'll try to find it for the show notes. And then it goes, and he shall lift you up higher and higher, and he shall lift you up. Right. It's really cool. It's learning that in humbling ourselves, we're lifted. So I think it's called Humble Thyself. So I have to try to find it. Yes.
What's interesting though is just by chance, I happen to be singing this weekend the song Humble and Kind.
I love that song.
It's a great tune. Yeah.
I forget
so I've been working on that.
Who first sang that. It's a country star.
I want to say Tim McGraw. Let me
Tim
just
McGraw. I think it is Tim McGraw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally goes with my flannel today.
It does. Yeah. And
I just need my cowboy hat.
Tim McGraw.
I need my cowboy hat.
Which I'm sure there's one around there somewhere.
Hey.
Hey. Is there?
At least 4 or 5 pair of cowboy boots. Yes. It's an addiction. Okay. Keep praying for me.
I think you need to take me shopping for cowboy boots. I've always wanted a pair of cowboy boots.
I know exactly where to take you.
Okay.
And we'll also take a friend, because you can buy 1 pair and get 2 free.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I would love that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
Back to the show.
Carry on.
Well, Sean, I'll be of service to you through the shopping experience.
Hey, that's perfect. Yeah.
It's what we call a shopportunity.
I love it.
Well, it's funny because this is the way I do love to serve people in that way. I've had friends take me shopping, and I can't tell you how much I love it, because to me, shopping on your own is not near as fun as with a friend. But being of service, and really what it comes down to, and is the idea that everyone has value. That would probably be number 2. Everyone has value. Growing up, both of my parents were incredible with this law. Incredible. Both of them were very giving to the community, and we didn't have a lot of money necessarily, but we had things we could do for people. For instance, my mom was always giving to our local ministry. She served a lot as a volunteer. She was a board president. She organized craft fairs. She just did all of those kinds of things. She kept having babies to make music at the church. So, my mom's whole life was really in service to others in many ways, to her family, to the church at large, to the community. Once she started running, she had the church organize a race, and then all the proceeds went to the church and the youth department. She and my brother even handmade all the trophies from a tree that was downed on her land. I mean, so both parents were very, very good at showing us that everyone had value. And my dad was very known for helping people get jobs. He believed everybody, had value, and if they could just kind of find the right spot, that they could make it. And I can't tell you the number of people who we met that were maybe just walking down the street, and my dad would say, "Hey, why don't you get in? Why don't you go for a ride with us?" And he'd talk to them and see what they needed and see what he could do. So I found them both to be very generous hearted when it came to others, not generous as in handing people money, because that's not always the highest service, although giving money can be very good. And there's a time I can remember my dad giving money that I remember like yesterday. It'd make me cry to tell the whole story. So we'll save that one for another day. But what I saw them do was treat people with dignity, right? Like see that they were people and had value, whether they were white or brown or black or whatever. In any given week, we would have a millionaire, a diamond dealer from New York show up at our house to sell my dad diamonds. A couple days later, the deputy sheriff would come over. A day later, somebody homeless that my dad was up getting a job. And he treated everyone exactly the same. And his goal was always to be in service to them, to support them, to help them up. And what he would say is, when I help them, everybody's better. If somebody quits walking down the street and instead has a job and has enough money to buy a car, well, they can help the next person and the next person and the next person. So his vision was actually very, very clear about if I help you, well, then I'm going to help you help somebody else. And then we're all helping each other, and the whole society, like the whole community, gets better and is lifted up. The area I grew up in, there were housing projects that were built kind of right behind us. And that was where a lot of people were walking back and forth. And then there was also a woman, an immigrant. She was from Germany that lived right across the street. And we would help her. We would be of service to her. And she would pay us with vegetables from her garden. And we became very close friends over the years with her, with a neighbor on the other side, with the people up the street. And it was through everyday service. It wasn't, hi, everybody, I'm going to go volunteer, so, I can look good and I can put it on Facebook. Although that's great and good and fine. It was the most quiet helping of others I've ever seen. It was like, what do you need? What do you need? And my dad quietly finding a way to get it. And I even knew people, there were a couple people, more than a couple, but certainly a couple that I was very aware of that took advantage of my dad's kindness. And, as strong as my dad was, I heard him say one time, that's just too bad. He wasn't even mad. He was sad that somebody he had really, really tried to help just refused, did not want to, was not ready. And, this would like hurt his heart somehow. That not that, not that he was mad, but that they weren't ready to receive that help. It kind of made him sad. But what I saw them do over and over and over was treat everyone the same. Everyone has value. And, when I was young, we would serve, my mom and I especially. I don't know if it was because of all my energy and my mom felt this need to keep me busy, which is probably pretty accurate. People think I'm a handful now. My God, as a kid, I was a handful. And we would go serve at a lot of soup kitchens. So we served at homeless shelters. One was downtown, very near Ebenezer Baptist, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. served. Another was in the projects near our house where we handed out government surplus food. Another was with the Mennonites. One of those Mennonites came to work at our church, and we became very good friends with our family. So that said, I've probably been in more homeless shelters and soup kitchens than most homeless people because of how I was taught to serve. And interestingly, when we would be on the way, my mom would say, "Now, honey, when we get there, people are going to look different than you. Some might smell different. Some might be saying and doing things you don't understand." She said, "No matter what, I want you to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, like you would me and your daddy. You understand me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I got it, So we go in this one soup kitchen, and it was rough. I mean, there were people everywhere, people of all colors, shapes, and sizes. And Mom was right. I'd never smelled some of those smells. It was body odor. It was too much drinking. I mean, you name it, anything you might associate, just filth in some cases. And it was very dirty and very hard as a kid to understand. Well, I forgot what my mom said about yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And somebody asked me something, and I said, yeah. And boy, from across the table, my mom gave me that look. Boop. I just felt those eyes looking at me. I said, yes, sir. And later, I found out one of the people, I think it was actually a woman, had said to my mom that no one had ever treated her with such kindness. Yeah. All anybody saw when they looked at her and them, the men and women, was they were homeless, not as people. Yeah. So everyone has value. If you haven't served at a place lately, if you haven't found a way to be in this law of service, you might start in very, very small ways that no one knows about. Clean up your office. Help your son or daughter in their room. Being of service in this way can be actually very exciting. And it makes you feel good inside to be of service, to know your oneness, to see someone's value. And then, finally to, go out into the larger community and see, is there a way I can be of service in some greater way? Some of the best minds in history were of service. And the one I'm thinking of right now, growing up in Georgia, it was really interesting. I grew up in the first integrated church in Georgia. My godfather was the minister. And of course, it was an all-white church until, it began to integrate. And I thought it was interesting that there was a basketball hoop at our church. It was just a small little hoop, no big deal. And somebody came to a board meeting and said, we need to put a fence around that basketball hoop to keep people out. And my godfather said, well, why would we do that? And they said, well, there's black kids coming to use that basketball hoop. And my godfather said, isn't that perfect? That's exactly what a basketball hoop is for, to be used. And that began, these tiny little steps into integrating blacks into the church during that time. And, more steps were taken in the future. And, My grandmother called up Coretta King and said, we need to get some people over here. Let's make this happen. So, my family did have, in fact, a strong connection to civil rights. And so what I'm speaking about is more than just something I read in a book. It's also family stories. And several years ago, I also met someone who had edited Dr. King's speeches, interestingly enough, as a teenager. We're still friends today. And one of the things she made me more aware of is that when Dr. King started, of course, he was a voice for Blacks, for civil rights, for Blacks. And in those days, that was exactly what we said was Blacks, not African American, as we've grown to say more and more in this country. And that was his first, foray into civil rights. And he was really a chosen leader and a very obviously good choice for a leader. His gift of oratory, his incredible commitment. I mean, I've studied Dr. King most of my life. I have books of his speeches, But what this friend who used to edit his speeches pointed out, and I thought it was so clear, and it really resonated given the other things I knew growing up, that she said, when King was killed, it was really not for his help of the Black community. It was that he started seeing that many facets of the community were being pushed down, not only Blacks, but poor whites, poor Puerto Ricans, and such. And so he started something called the Poor People's Campaign. And she said he was trying to get fair wages for everyone. And she told me many stories of what he would say to poor whites. And so he became dangerous, not just because he was helping Blacks, but because he was helping all people know their worth, right? And so that service went beyond a race. It went to a humanity. And so today, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, and as we said last show, today, as we hear certain groups of people being pushed down by our words and by our thought processes, friends, there's a lot of work to be done, and we can show how we value and serve others through our voice, through our service in communities, through knowing our oneness, through seeing everyone has value. And remember that this service is, as you're serving, knowing you're serving God in this process. You're dedicating the service of others to God. And that's the highest service there is. In years ago in a work situation, it was kind of a tough work situation. I don't need to go into why, but my affirmation every day was, I only work for God. And I realized everything I was doing at that job, if I didn't dedicate it to God, I would get frustrated. Well, if I dedicated it to God, I said, I can do my best. I can show up. And you know what? I released the rest to you, God. I was trying to simply serve the highest and best while I was there. A few months later, I got a job offer, and I left the position. But in the meantime, I had to find a way to work there, and it was just to be in service, yes, to them, but it was with this higher authority that I was serving. So friends, I want you to really, really think about this one. How can you use, I'm always asking this, how can I use my light and my love in a way to support others, especially others who are feeling pushed down right now? Especially, how can I use my voice? How can I use my life in service to others? And most of the ways I do it are very, very quiet and no one will ever see. It might be taking food down to somebody who's run into some bad luck that's sitting along the curb by Lake Eola. It might be buying coffee for somebody who I've noticed is hanging around the coffee shop but doesn't ever seem to have a coffee. It's doing these little things, being in service to others, and knowing that as I serve, I'm saying to the universe, I am worthy because I have something to give. And also knowing, everyone has value. Everyone has value. I am one with all. So I want to use my life and my voice to serve others, dedicating that service to God. So, my friends, I hope you will think about this. Is there any new way you're being called to be of service? Remember that this can be a very quiet thing. It can be something in the office that you do. It could be helping a friend, a move. It could be anything. But remember, as you do it, dedicating it to God, knowing that as you do this, you are aligning with the law of service. So, dear friends, thank you so much for listening today. I hope my book will be out any day now on Amazon. It may even be out already. We'll just have to check Amazon, and we'll give you more information at the top of the show next week so you can know if the book is out. All right? All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and blessings on the journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. This podcast is made possible because of listeners and viewers just like you. If you would like to support the podcast with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head on over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Experience of the Soul podcast is copyright 2024 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved, and is produced by Sean Kilgore. A production of the Soulworks Group, Incorporated. Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The Soulworks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. Soulworks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience, with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the Soulworks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.